Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Optimised Self podcast. Today, I'm interviewing, I can call her Power Woman, Lea Bochtler. I've been following her, I think, for 2 years. You've been a coach as well for 2 years. We both help people with productivity. For example, I'm more focused on health. I think Lea is more focused really on the productivity, and I think she does amazing work. Next to having her own business, she's also studying at Colombia University, which I can't even fathom how she combines the two, but that's something we will find out in this interview from her. And it just made me interested to have a conversation with her, talk about her background, talk about how she combines everything and what her vision is for the future. So thanks for being on the show, Lea. Maybe you could give a short introduction yourself.
Yeah, what's up, guys? I'm Lea, and Stefan, right? Stefan here has already mentioned a few things about me, but yeah, I'm currently at Colombia University. I've been running my own online coaching business for the past 2.5 years now. And it started with a massive change in myself, which I'm sure we're going to dive into, right? So it's like, why did you become a time mastery coach? There's actually a whole story behind that. I didn't just randomly choose something. So yeah, changed my own habits, then decided I want to share this with more people. I felt like it was my calling, what I was meant to do, and then hired some amazing mentors, learned from them, and then started my own business and just, never gave up, basically. There are times with more intensity on the business side, like when I didn't have grad school, for example, and I just took a whole year off to work on it. But now with grad school, you could say the business is slightly slower, but it's very steady now, right? 2.5 years later.
Yeah. Perfect. And that's something we get into later, because that's what I've also found with business is after a time, you start to understand the major components of the business. So the marketing part, the sales part, and every component just fits into each other, and it takes less time from your side. Before we dive into that, I also know you studied in Maastricht University, which is actually quite close from where I studied. I studied at Tilburg University, also in the Netherlands. What is your academic background? You first studied in Maastricht, you're now studying at Colombia. Yeah, can you take us away about what you're studying?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say upbringing-wise, I got the privilege of experiencing a lot of different countries and cultures. So I'm German Chinese. My mom's Chinese, my dad's German. I was born and raised in Beijing. I basically spent all my childhood years, so kindergarten to high school graduation, in Beijing. And then I went to, after high school graduation, as you mentioned, I went to the Netherlands, Maastricht, probably not too far from where you are, for undergrad. I studied international business because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And then after that, and getting into this online world of coaching, I realized I like education, but I like a new kind of education, not necessarily in a classroom, the kids or the students, they have to study certain subjects, but more so freedom. Like you study what you're truly passionate about and you make something of it, right? So yeah, then I decided, okay, well, I want to have a more solid foundation in education, and that's why I'm at Colombia now.
Yeah, super interesting. This is a short question I have, because for me, it was the same thing. Like I was studying also international business, and then I told my parents, hey, I'm going to become a coach. And I didn't even have clients at the time. I was done with my master's. And I thought I'm just going to try it. I have some savings. I don't have any responsibilities. Let's just do it. How did your parents react when you actually made that decision to become a coach?
That's amazing. I would actually love to rally that question back to you in a bit. My parents, I would say, had slightly different reactions. My dad, he's very traditional. He's the kind of person who works for a company for 40, 50 years, extremely loyal, right? And very hands-on, like a lot of his skills, he's an engineer, right? So he knows how to do a lot of things like build, right, fix. And so when it came to online coaching, which is very much communication, a very different skill set, initially he thought, like, get a real job, right? Get a real internship. What are you doing? Are you sure? That sort of thing. But I just knew it was because he didn't understand the industry, right? Having worked in car companies as an engineer his whole life. And then my mom, on the other hand, she had several businesses and she still does network marketing. So she's more open to this idea. So I would say my mom was fully on board, just do it, right? Obviously a bit of caution, like don't invest $15K at once initially.
Yeah, yeah.
manage your finances. But mom was, I would say, all on board. Dad took a bit of time to convince for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And how did that change over the period of you, of course, achieving success with your coaching business? Yeah, how did our opinions change, or how is that now?
Yeah. I mean, now it's fully on board, though a realization I think we've all came to, like me, my mom, and my dad, or my entire family, is that it would still be good for me to go to like a big consulting firm or a big coaching company, right? One of the biggest players in the space, and just work there for 1 or 2 years to get my skill set really to the top, right? Like
Yeah.
top, instead of just figuring out these small incremental improvements and then eventually reaching there, right? So that's something I might do. But for now, they're happy. I'm happy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a good point you're making. One of the first podcast episodes I recorded was with one of my former one-on-one coaches, and he's been a part of Pfizer, like big companies, and then he started for himself. And actually,
Okay.
one of the things we talked about in the podcast was exactly this: is that he sees people in the coaching industry who
Hmm.
have no experience in the corporate world, and they're just saying
Yeah.
stuff. So, for example, hey, I am the best peak performance coach there is. Whereas as a company, if you would say that, you would really have to back it up by science, by case studies that will actually tell you that. But because the coaching industry is not that mature, you can just say whatever you want. But I think it's a great one to get that experience and then move from there. What are you currently studying at Colombia? Is it also business, or what kind of study are you doing there?
Yeah, so I'm studying at Teachers College. It's their, organizational, educational department. I'm studying adult learning and leadership. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, and what kind of topics are you learning about there?
Yeah, so we do some psychology work, like I've learned about motivation, what really motivates people, the different kinds of it. I would say that's one of the few theories that has actually stuck with me so far. Now, in terms of, is it the best investment to go to grad school to scale my coaching business? Probably not, because there are
Yeah,
much more relevant, coaching programs, mentors, books, podcasts, etc. But I'm also there for the overall experience, right? Of
yeah.
just being at a world-renowned university, networking, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's also when I look back at my time studying. So, for your background, because I think you might not know this about me, when I was a student, I was the typical Dutch student, which you've probably also experienced binge drinking, partying, smoking weed, all of that stuff. And if
Yep.
I look back at, and that's when I made the change, of course, into what I do now and personal development. But when I look back at that period, I could have made use of the network way more because, for
Mhm.
example, also the entrepreneurship facilities at university, the connections you can make a lot of connections, but it's you that actually has to put in that work. You have to be open for it, but you can make a lot of connections out of it, and it's super interesting. Yeah, and
Yeah, sure.
now more as a, because of course you're a time mastery course, so I'm also very curious how you do this. But how do you combine your coaching business with your university degree? Because I can imagine that, especially Columbia University, it's a world-renowned university. So I'm guessing it takes a lot of work, a lot of effort to put into it. How do you combine those two?
Yeah. So, a bit of a surprise for everyone. I would say my undergrad in Maastricht in the Netherlands was far more difficult and intensive than Colombia. It could just
Oh,
be studying, okay, because I mean, in undergrad, I would say I had more courses, that's for one, but also just the amount of work for each, right? Like you quite literally had to sometimes dig your head into a textbook and read for hours
yeah,
to get all the information needed. Whereas now, especially with education, it's more so, okay, you read articles and then you write papers or you discuss in class. And, you can pick and choose what you like to read. I mean, there's not the expectation that you read every single paper.
yeah,
So I would say it's a lot easier now compared to undergrad. And that's also when I started my business, my last semester at Maastricht,
yeah,
which truly I would say was the most difficult time or most stressful, right? Combining the two, getting things off the ground. And so should I maybe just talk about when I started? Because I think that's a
yeah,
better story.
yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So when I first started my business, last semester of undergrad, What I would do is, I'm curious, Stefan, have you heard of something called the Eisenhower Efficiency Matrix?
I've heard about it. I've sometimes use it, but I don't always use it. But I do know about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something I teach my clients because I think it's good to know how to structure your tasks in a day. And there, I don't
Could
know
you
if this,
maybe shortly explain what it is, like high level,
yeah,
to the
absolutely.
people listening?
Right, so it's called the Eisenhower Efficiency Matrix, in case you want to search it up. And it was made by a former US president, actually. His name is Dwight Eisenhower. So he was also in charge of, building highways and just a lot of projects, right? And obviously very busy. So how did he manage his time? He came up with a framework. There's 4 quadrants, and you can schedule all your tasks in here based on importance and urgency. So importance means, does this task directly lead you to your goals? And urgency means, is there a clear deadline? Like, is it something where someone else is holding you accountable? Your team, your professor, your boss. If that's the case, high urgency. If not, then low urgency, right? And so I would say the most important concept here is, if you want to start your own business, this is what I learned when I started my business. If you want to start your own business or your own thing besides full-time studies or work, right, like a full-time commitment, you actually have to prioritize not your work or your studies, you have to prioritize your business first. Because if you don't, it's so easy for just everything else to fill up the time, right? Like your academic work, or if you're working a full-time job, there's tons of things you could do for your job. And so I would wake up 6:30 every morning. So that's one thing. I would say start with the morning routine, wake up 6:30, a bit earlier than the typical student back then.
Yeah.
Then by 7 a.m., I would be at my desk. And really the first 2 hours of my day, 7 to 9, or sometimes a bit longer, let's say 7 to 9 or 10, I would work on my business. That came first. And then around 10:30, then I would dive into my, university work. So nothing was compromised. Both got done. But again, I was making rapid progress on the business because the first 2-3 hours every morning were dedicated to that.
Yeah. And that's such an important principle. I also teach with my clients, like, always do the most important thing first, because you have the most, also if you look at it biologically speaking, you are making the most cortisol, you are having the most energy. And if you waste that time on a morning routine that takes 2 hours, or maybe you go to the gym at that time, like, it's all things that are good, but it's not the most effective way for you to actually reach your goals. I'm also curious, how did your full day look like? Because I know you've also been a student of Richard Yu. I was listening to one of the podcasts you did earlier. You were talking about him, and I still remember the times also when I was watching his videos, and I was like, this guy, how does he do that? How did your schedule look like in those last 6 months?
You mean the last 6 months?
Yeah, of your undergrad studies, where you said, like, hey, I'm starting up my coaching business, and I'm also doing the undergrad.
Yeah. So first 6 months of starting my coaching business, again, the hardest time, right?
Yeah.
And so my schedule, on a very high level, it's what I just mentioned, right? Wake up 6:30, Monday to Saturday, Sundays off, and then work on coaching business the first 2-3 hours, and then start with my most important tasks for uni. And obviously, what I had to do, because my coaching business, was also get my uni work done much faster. So instead of previously, having the whole day and therefore spending the whole day on uni work and catching every tiny detail, right? Preparing like literally everything for a test or before a test. Instead of that, I just became much more high level. Like, okay, let's study the main concepts and then you're fine, right? Just do your best. So the focus shifted away from grades, and that also helped a lot. Or like the focus shifted away from getting, A pluses, and it shifted towards just learning, like enjoying the learning process and learning the most important concepts, getting things done quickly, and the rest of my time, it was all my business, right? And I remember within the first 6 months, I probably had already taken at least 100 calls, if not more, because we had to do market research and all that. So some days I'd have, I think the most was 6 to 7 calls. And by the end of it, I'd lose my voice. Like, there were days where I was very exhausted. But looking back, I think sprinting initially was the right decision, at least for me. Because I see a lot of people initially, if they go too slow, and if they have like a plan B, oh, but I have a good job. If it doesn't work, I can always just go back to that. If that is the case, typically they just don't push hard enough, right? Like they simply don't push hard enough on their business, or it just slowly fades away, right? It's not as lucrative as their full-time job, so it just becomes not so much a priority. So yeah, I pushed really hard, and then once I graduated, obviously freed up more time, and then it was a bit easier.
Yeah, exactly. How did you keep yourself in? By the way, before I go into that, like I totally attest to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to break out of that comfort zone and you just have to put in the hours as well. Which we were talking about at the start with business. I always see it as it's sort of like a puzzle that you're laying down. And there are certain kind of pieces that have to fit. So you have to do market research, you have to learn about sales, you have to learn about product delivery. And it just takes time. Just like a normal skill would take time, the skill of business also takes time. So the more hours you put in, the faster you can actually get there. But it sounds like a heavy stress period. How did you keep yourself into peak performance? Was it more about understanding your why, and that was driving you? What kept you sane, so to speak, in those times?
Yeah, what kept me sane? I mean, I think to some extent, I normalized the fact that it was going to be hard. Like, I didn't think, oh, why is it so difficult? Maybe I should slow down. This is not normal. I just accepted the fact that, okay, it's going to be hard initially, and I need to get, my first round of clients as quickly as possible. So I'm going to do whatever it takes to do that. So that was like the mental state I was in. It was more so, I have to make this work. And I also set pretty tight deadlines. Richard, for example, one thing he challenged us to do was within 30 days, within the 30-day period, and it was probably only 2 weeks after I started, right? 30 days, the goal was to get to 10K. And so that meant, I don't know, like 14, 15, if not more clients. And so I just pushed for that. Yeah, I did whatever it took to get there. But here's the thing, I still kept my core habits. If I look back, what kept me sane and from not burning out was I still got my 8 hours of sleep, right? I cut down on social media, all those distractions massively. And so sleep was good. I still had active breaks, like I went outside on walks, I did my exercise. All those necessary habits were still there to prevent burnout.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what I also see in the clients I coach, because it's also more focused on these types of things. Like, for example, we have a new client that has been in a burnout. Now he's reaching burnout again. So then we help him with his health. But I always see it's two things. It's one, you're not really enjoying the process. You're not actually enjoying what you're doing, talking to people. And the second thing is you're not doing your non-negotiables. So you're not getting outside in sunlight. You're not getting your sleep. And then, of course, even if you do the best type of work, it will still burn you out in the later stages. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One thing that just shot into my mind, I remember the post you made maybe 6 months ago, where you basically said that you were in this sort of, I wouldn't call it rat race, but you said that the goals for the profits was taking over, and that you actually wanted to get back into the passion and why you were doing it. Do you still remember what I'm trying to reference at? Maybe you could explain. Explain a bit more about it.
Yeah, for sure. I'll save my coffee for later. Essentially, maybe it was a bit more than 6 months ago. I would say probably more so a year, but either way. There was a certain point, I'd say a rough estimate, about a year into my journey, or a bit less than a year, right? Where I joined this mastermind, or this inner circle, right? And there it was just like, go, 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 right? Scale as quickly as you can. And at that point, it was just me. I didn't have team members. And I think I was also hiring my first team members. So it was just very stressful. And because we would have these weekly check-ins with the coaches, and they would review everyone's weekly trackers with all their numbers, right? What was your cash collected, your revenue, etc. it just became like not the typical rat race where you're stuck in a job and you're tight on finances, but it became like this never ending climb to the top, right? You always want to, every week you want to increase your numbers. And I felt like it just took away some joy for me. And I'm not sure I liked the approach I was taking, where maybe it was a bit more pushy, right? So I realized that after a period of time, that I think that in itself was just making me lose some passion for coaching, and I just wasn't enjoying it. And so that's when I decided to just take back control and focus on client results. And it's not about more clients, it's just about like really taking care of your current clients. And then if you do that, then more clients will come, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you. I was talking about it with a friend of mine as well, is that entrepreneurs usually they talk bad about the 9 to 5 rat race and everything behind that. And of course, there's some merit to it because I see some people not really doing what they're passionate about. But as entrepreneurs, we get into the same rat race. It's the exact same thing. As we're like, oh, you hit 10K, let's go to 100K. Oh, you hit 100K, you have to do 500K. Whereas no one is really asking themselves, okay, what do I actually want out of life? I want to serve people in the best way possible. I want to have good finances. And maybe if you're doing 20K a month and you're getting awesome client results, that's the thing that really makes you happy. And then if you shoot for that 100K and you're getting worse client results, then that's not the thing you want. You're still in the same rat race. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, that's the exact realization I had. That for me, if I was pushing so hard and therefore sacrificing client results because I just couldn't take care of everyone, right, who was coming in, that actually put on more stress and it just made me unhappy, right? And it also felt like never ending. So exactly what you said.
Yeah, and I think it's actually into what we both do. I think we're both very passionate about what we do because we are doing something. At least I'm going to ask you that question, but we are doing something because we struggled with it ourselves, and then we want to help others with it as well. So it's a real passion. Whereas maybe sometimes coaches that are more focused on making money, sure, they would also really like to help the people, but yeah, maybe it comes less out of a real passion from themselves and more out of a way to make a lot of money. But what would you say is your passion at this moment?
My passion at this moment, I mean, time mastery will always be a passion of mine. And by the way, when I say time mastery, some people are like, huh, what is that? Is it time mastery, high performance? Is it peak performance? Look, I think it's really just how you term it, right? I see it as similar. Obviously, I focus a bit more on the time management aspect and habits, like your daily routine. Maybe you, Stefan, it's more of, did you say health? Or
yeah, it's a bit of that, but it's also focused on health. So for example, supplements, sleep optimization with the Aura ring, stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. I would say that's probably even more holistic, right? Yeah, I don't do supplements, things like that. It's more about like just focusing on the basics and becoming the person you need to be on a daily basis, having the right habits so that you can achieve XYZ, right? And now I forgot your question.
What are you passionate about?
Passionate about, yeah. Time mastery, as I mentioned, will always be one because it changed me and it will continue to do so forever. But also, do you want me to talk about some of my other hobbies? Like,
yeah, just something you're passionate about in life, because I think that's what creates you as a person, also the business that you're having. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm also a very active person. So, another reason why I just cannot take like 6 sales calls per day consistently for years and years is because I like to spend a lot of time outdoors, you know, and run around, play soccer or football, I should say. I'm a huge fan. I watch, I play. I've been playing for like 6-7 years.
Yeah.
So all these sports, it's been in me since I was young. Like my parents say when I was a baby, I used to throw any kind of ball at them and faster with more speed than they could. So I don't know. That seems to be in my blood. And
what's your favorite football club? Sorry if I interrupt, but I want to know. Yeah.
Bayern Munich.
Bayern Munich. Nice. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Yeah, I'm a PSV Eindhoven. I don't know if you know them. That's my my club. But yeah, it's interesting. As a child, I was always like super fan of PSV. Like literally, when they lost, I would be like sad all day, and then it sort of faded away for a time, and now it's slowly coming back because I'm also noticing way more and more is that life is not only about the business; it's also about your passions. I think you find
For
it
sure.
fun, right? Yeah,
Yeah, so soccer is definitely something that like keeps me going, keeps me sane, keeps me energetic, happy too. And then also, I think this passion or this fuel drives my business as well, which is giving back. And I know that's super broad, but giving back more so on a local basis. It doesn't have to mean I go to a totally different country and I go and support the biggest charity there. Like even people around me, just because the area I live in China, for example, I would say there's a pretty big range in income levels,
yeah,
right? And so, yeah, the people who have taken care of me when I was younger, my mom used to own restaurants here as well. So the people working there, I just share a very close bond with a lot of them. And like being able to just give them, have you ever heard of red packets in China?
no, no,
Yeah. So Chinese New Year, it's around January, February every year, slightly
yeah,
different than our New Year. And typically kids get these red packets with, or red pockets with money. It's like an envelope with some money inside and it's red, but you can also give it to adults, right? And I've started to do that the past few years, give it to the guards in my compound, give it to, ayis, people who, took care of me when I was young, as a kid, people at my mom's restaurants. And it's just something that gives me so much joy. Like I also realized, especially this last year, that I want to be a massive provider and a giver. I just feel like that's who I am, right?
yeah,
So, like I want to take care of people. And so it doesn't matter if right now I'm only able to give smaller amount, or it doesn't really matter the amount. It's more so just the act of giving. It makes me really happy. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's super interesting. And what are, because we talked about your routines when you were starting up your business, what are the things now that really, yeah, make you a master of your time and get you into that peak performance state where you are happy, balanced, and productive?
hmm I would say again, sleep is massive.
Yeah,
So 8.5 hours of sleep, that's a must. Otherwise, I have to take a nap in the afternoon, which is not very productive, at least for
yeah,
me. And then I need to have some active breaks throughout the day and not just once as well. Like I quite literally need to go outside every few hours, get some fresh air. That's another must. And then no snoozing is also something I take very seriously. I don't think I've snoozed for, I don't know, a year or 2 years. I can't really remember the last time because I always plan my day the night before. So that also
yeah,
leads me to my next one. That's critical too. So that when I wake up, I know exactly what to do. There's no hesitation. There's no sense of, oh, I've got tons of time today. Like I can take it at easy, right? I can scroll forward a bit. I can spend half an hour on Instagram. There's none of that. Yeah, I would say it's the mornings. It's the mornings that make the biggest difference for me. If I can just wake up on time with enough sleep and then knock out my three most important tasks in the morning, preferably before noon, it's going to be a good day.
yeah, yeah. I find it so funny because I was talking to a client of mine and we were talking about these same things. And to people listening who are not doing these things and they're maybe in a performance rut, they might have the idea of like, is it really that simple? Just get 8 hours of sleep, do your three most important tasks. But it actually is. If you do it consistently, and I think that's the most important part because a lot of people can do it for a week, but then they slack off. If you do it consistently, it's a complete game changer. Like these tiny habits of planning your day. I have the same. If I don't plan out my day, I just feel lost. I just in the day I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? I can do this, I can do that. It doesn't really work. I'm also curious, what are some, because I know you are doing similar things as I do, what are some client results that you're particularly proud of achieving?
Yeah, one that comes to mind, she was actually one of my first clients. Maybe she was my first or second client ever. Okay, and she's Dutch. And she was also my first friend from university. Like literally the first
Oh,
undergrad. So it was just this very special bond we had. And the reason why I think having her in my program was so special, and then also her transformation, is because obviously we were friends, right? And when she joined, she was a bit hesitant, but I told her a personal story of when I invested the first time myself, $500, even though it's not much today, back then it felt like a fortune. And I was very afraid, right? Like literally shaking it as I was typing in my card details. So I just told her, I helped walk her through her pain, or her fears. And then she ended up doing it. And at the end of the 8 weeks, her biggest change was not so much just like this specific habit or that specific habit. It really was a total mental shift, right? Before it was just very much complacency in all areas, as in, oh, if I have a test today or I have a big project, I'm just not going to go to the gym because I don't have time. But like immediately, I don't have time for anything else but this. But then she would still sometimes like hang out with her friends first and then get started on that project. You know what I meant? So just wrong priorities, a feeling of complacency, waking up late, procrastinating until the last minute. And yeah, because of those mental shifts, she became the kind of person where it's like, I stick to my non-negotiables. That's simple, right? They're my non-negotiables. If I say I'm going to go to the gym 3 times per week, it doesn't matter if I have a test this week, I'm still going to go, right? And I just saw her become so much more resilient. And that was something that, I was very happy to see. So that's just one example. And then there have been many others.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a perfect point you're making, is that's what I see in clients as well, is once they change the person that they're being, that's when they really change. Like if they are just doing the routines because you say that they're going to do it, then it doesn't work. But if they say to themselves like, hey, I am the person that does the non-negotiables no matter what, that's when you make real change. Because then, that's so funny. What are you doing yourself for your mindset and for being in a good mental state? We talked about, of course, the more peak performance, time mastery stuff. What are you doing in terms of your mental state to keep that at peak capacity?
Absolutely. So I have a habit of reading every other day. I don't spend too much time on it because I don't want information overwhelm and not to do anything with it. But I pick books that with skills I specifically want to develop at this current time. So right now I'm reading this book right here. It's very good. Colombia University. Have you read it?
No, I downloaded it on my Audible, but I haven't read it yet. I've read the 10x rule first, and now I'm going to read this one. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. It's a very good book that has totally shifted my perception on sales. Because I'll just tell you, I was not a natural when I started. And I just had some limiting beliefs about it, a bit of negativity when it came to it, but now totally different. So I read books like this about sales, marketing, things related to what I do, obviously habits as well, self-development. And I also just constantly remind myself, always think about positive things, right? I quite literally try to cut out all the negativity. If someone around me says something negative, I treat it quite literally like trash, right? Okay, I'm just going to throw it out. I heard it, but it's okay. I'm going to throw it out and move on. So I just don't let negativity sit with me. And all the information I consume, like books, podcasts, YouTube, most of it is highly successful entrepreneurs, typically young and very positive. So people like Iman Gadzhi, he's someone I really look up to, even though he mainly speaks to young males. Who else? There's, Sebastian Georgiou. I hope I'm saying his last name correctly. These big guys on YouTube. Jordan Welch.
Yeah, I also wouldn't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah. Street interviews, things like that. And then for books, it's all kinds of authors, right? Grant Cardone, Alex Hormozy. What else? I've got Tim Ferriss right here, Cal Newport, Deep Work.
Yeah. What is from the book Sell or Be Sold? What is the key shift that you've made since reading the book? Or are you now reading it, of course?
A lot. Let me open it up and tell you. Okay. Let me see what would be the most helpful for people.
Yeah, it's such an interesting person. I was listening to a podcast with him and Lewis House, and just the way he speaks, the way he operates, it's super interesting. Yeah.
For sure. I mean, a lot of this is not completely new to me, but I would say, like, he talks about what really leads to a sale, right? And a lot of it is just having 100% conviction what you offer. Like, if you truly believe that what you have can help someone and you express that with 100% conviction and you have a good attitude, right? If you push someone to take action, even though you push, you're not pushing for yourself, your own gain, you're pushing because you know it's going to help them and you want them to make, the right decision for them. As long as you do that, even, pushiness, it's not going to be perceived as the bad kind. So just things like that, right? Persistence, what does it really mean to sell, which is to serve? And the fact that quite literally our entire world economy depends on sales. So if we stopped selling, like the world economy would quite literally collapse. And so it just helped me take that fear out of selling, like the sense of, oh, I'm doing something wrong, which I had initially, right, about 2.5 years ago. And realized that it is truly the most important skill. And it's one that everyone should learn. Oh, and one more thing. There's a very big difference between a salesperson, like an amateur, the average salesperson, versus a sales professional. Right? And I don't want to go into too many details because I don't remember all the small things he said, but it's just like, a sales professional is someone who, even from the outside, like they dress properly, right? Attitude-wise, the way they present their offer, like giving their clients full transparency as opposed to, oh, there's only one option, choose that. Like quite literally even laying out all other competitors so that when clients come to you, they know, okay, these are my options, instead of then having to say, oh, okay, let me think about it because I want to compare my options. So just small things like that.
Yeah.
Read it in the book.
I'm definitely going to read it. And one of the things you touched upon is what I struggled with sales as well, is that I sometimes forget how valuable it is, the thing that we are selling. And that's when you don't make the sale. And if I look back at my best sales calls, when I was just in the call and I was like, this is so valuable to this person. Like if he doesn't do it, he's like, and not to condescend him, but then he's stupid. Like, because I know I can change his life. And if you have that conviction, people really sense the energy. And that's what I found as well. Sales is more about the energy you portray than it is about the exact words you say. Of course, the words are very important and you need to do it in a certain kind of structure and build up a pain. But if you are, that's what I am when I had my first sales call, and I think you can relate to it as well. I was just in the call very needy of like, oh, I want this sale so bad. Whereas you should be in a call, hey, this is going to be very helpful to you. But if you don't see it, it's not my problem. There are more people that we can help. And it's such a mindset shift. How do you continually get into that state? Are there certain kind of practices you do, or how do you cultivate that?
Oh, that's a good question. I used to have a few really powerful quotes I would look at before my sales calls. Just a few, let's say, values I want to portray on a sales call. For example, there's one that goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. As in, like, if it gets to a point on a sales call where you've presented how you can help very, like very specifically, it's all clear. You can't literally force someone to do it, right? So that's also a part of not being needy and just letting the cards fall wherever they may. You try your best and then you let the cards fall, right? Be totally detached from the outcome. And then what else? There was also another one, I can't remember the exact wording, but it's basically, oh no, I think I remember. It was so good, I can't remember. Okay, sorry about that. But it basically means that wherever you come from, like wherever your heart is on a sales call, that is what the other person's going to sense, right?
Yeah.
So again, if you come from a place of, I need the sale for myself, the other person's going to sense that, they're probably not going to buy, right? Whereas if it's like, I just want to help, then they're going to sense that too, and that's going to make them want to buy, right? So I had a few of these powerful statements. I'm sorry, I can only remember one right now.
Yeah, no problem. But I think they're very helpful for the people, and that's what I found as well. When I'm in that abundance state, I've had sales calls where I was just fooling around with the person. I was just having fun, being light, and they didn't even have an objection about joining my program. And then there were others where I was super tense, trying to read a full script and do it word by word. And then, even though it was the perfect fit, the sale didn't go through because they just sensed that it wasn't really the thing for them. And that's so important. One question I have about your business right now: do you do everything yourself? Do you have a team, or how are you managing that?
Yeah. So I used to have appointment setters, 3, 1 at a time. It's just the first 2 didn't work out so well, right?
Yeah.
And now I don't have setters because I'm in grad school, and I realize managing people is actually, at least for me, the toughest part of running a business.
Yeah.
It's not so much the basic things like posting content, having conversations, booking calls, closing calls anymore, because that, after 2.5 years of practice, you just get a hang of it. It really is just managing people. So when I first got to grad school, I realized it's too much. So parted ways with my appointment setter. Right now, I do all the sales calls, all of that, but I have some people who help me edit my videos, right? The things that take a lot of time. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah, that's super interesting. I've had the same experience with appointment setters, and that sometimes I think one of the things I also learned about team management, which I'm also getting into now more and more, is that you can never, they will always, if you are 100%, they will only be at 80% of what you can do. And that's just a natural thing because, they can do it exactly as you want them to. But it's a real process in getting them on board, getting them to perform. And it's a whole different level than doing things yourself. But it's a skill, of course, you have to learn for that next level in your business.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can I ask how big your team is right now?
Yeah, so I don't know if you know, but I'm together with 2 others. So we have the company with the 3 of us. All 3 of us were performance coaches here in the Netherlands, focused on biohacking and health. So also doing a bit of time mastery, but mostly focused on optimizing sleep, nutrition, workouts, stuff like that. And then we decided to merge our companies. And so since January, we've been working with the 3 of us. And now we do have 2 setters. But we're still in the process of optimizing it because you've had it as well. It's not something that is immediately it goes well. And that's it for now. And then we have the same issue, certain kind of people, for example, virtual assistant who does small tasks for us and an editor that does small tasks for us. But the first step is to really get the appointment setters working very well. And then, of course, getting someone for sales, eventually for delivery. But that's how our team is now. But I've learned a lot about just also, for example, the conversation with the virtual assistant as well. Is what I've learned is how you start up a conversation, or the first week or 2 weeks are really crucial in leadership. Because if you at that time try to become their friend and you don't really set your boundaries, it's very difficult to still get that afterwards. That's one of the things I learned now. And as a natural, more people pleaser, it's a hard way to learn, but it's a lesson you have to learn either way.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
How was that for you, leading people? What kind of challenges did you run into there?
I would say I got really lucky with my second appointment setter, right? So I had 3 in total. I mean, second and third were both pretty good. The biggest problem I ran into was honestly just a lack of experience in hiring initially. So my first appointment setter, just totally wrong hire. I mean, not the right fit for the position. And looking back, the biggest mistake was I just hired too quickly and trusted too easily, right? I should have had, let's say, a 1 week or 2 week period where this person had to first start working for me, and I'm happy to pay them, right? I can pay them, but they have to first complete a project or complete a task to show that they're a good fit for the role and then officially hire them long term, right? As opposed to, okay, we just did a 5-minute chat in the DMs. I see that you can type. And since you've only made, a few grammar mistakes, it's going to be all fine. And then we start. So that was my first hire. It was just way too rushed. I didn't know what I was doing. And then what else? The second hire was super reliable. So I think I got a bit lucky there, but also learned a bit from the first. So it took a bit more time in the hiring process. Had more tests. It's just like getting into college. If you want to be a top college, you want to make sure that your students really have good preparation, whether that's test scores or extracurriculars, And then third hire, I think the biggest issue I had there was I didn't have a clear plan for my team member on how they could grow with me in the company. As in, it was like, okay, you'd be earning this much, but I think if you really want A players, you need to communicate clearly how their income, but also how they're going to grow as a person over time with you, right? Like, are you going to provide extra trainings? What skills are they going to learn? And then also income-wise, like, what can they expect this month, next month? And then what kind of numbers do you have to hit? Just like literally mapping it out for them so clearly so that then they're internally motivated, right? And you don't have to be the one that's always like pushing.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect one. Something I haven't done, but really laying out the roadmap. Because as you've said, I think someone that's a B or C player, you don't necessarily have to do that because they are just like happy with what they're having, right? But an A player always wants to go to the next level, always wants to be at the next step. And if you don't give it to them, they'll search it for somewhere else. Yeah, super valuable insight.
Yeah, you only want A players on your team as well, right? Because those are the people that you can trust to do a good job even when you're not looking. So I feel like for me, the biggest mistake was, first of all, I hired some B and C players. And so it's a problem initially with the hiring process. But then also after hiring, even if it was an A player, I couldn't keep them for long enough because they just didn't have a clear plan for growing with me, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Exactly. Yeah. One of the final questions I have is, let's say you have a magic wand and you could change one thing about our society. It could be a mental shift. It could be, just a habit people do. What would it be?
Wow, I love that question. I've heard something similar before, like the magic wand.
Yeah.
I would say the phone. Like, honestly, when I see people at a restaurant with their kids, with people they love, and the whole time I don't know if this is as prevalent in Europe or the US.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
It is. But honestly, I think it's better in Europe because like living there, people still have better in-person connections. But I mean, there are just certain cultures, and I would say China is one of them, where you get on the subway, there's not one person who's having a conversation or reading a book or doing something other than, and I mean, that I can even accept because you're in transit, okay, whatever. But it's like when you're with your family and that's what you do, I just see that as such a bad habit. It feels disrespectful to me, even though like I'm not a part of that family. I just think it's not respectful to each other.
Yeah.
And I feel a sense of like pity. Why aren't people enjoying time in person? Why aren't people looking each other in the eye and having conversation, laughing and smiling, etc.? So that's something I really want to help society fix. Now, obviously, if there was a magic wand and it could be fixed like that, that'd be great. But just awareness, right? Really making people aware of how much time they're spending on their phones, glued to it. And then once that awareness is there, how can we start helping people detach from the phone and not making it like literally glued to them? That's a big, big mission I have.
Yeah. Super interesting. I've actually been thinking about that as well, is to make sort of like an offer for reducing your screen time. But I think one of the main problems that there is, which you perfectly said, is that people don't have the awareness. They don't even have the awareness that this is causing them to have more stress, to have worse relationships. They just accept it as a part of life and they don't know that it's because they are on their phone for 4, 5, 6 hours. a day. Yeah. And the funny thing is as well, is like, for example, with Instagram, why are we on Instagram? Because we have a human, like an innate thing that we want to connect with others. And then what we are doing when we are indeed with friends or family is we're trying to get that connection from our phone, whereas we can actually get it from the people around us. And like, I have to say, sometimes I'm guilty of it as well, that I'm more on my phone and you're not doing it, but it's such a good reminder to make. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just ironic, right? You want to make
Yeah.
connections on social media, but then you're sitting with someone and then you're not connecting with them. You're still on your phone. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. The final question I ask every guest of the podcast is, you've said that you've had a lot of mentors in your journey. My question to you is, who has been your biggest mentor in life? And what is one actionable thing the listeners can take away from that?
Who has been my biggest mentor in life? Oh my goodness. It's so hard to say. Can I give two? Because
Yeah,
I think
of course.
it's
Yeah.
so difficult. Because one is my mom. Okay, I really look up to her. The reason why is because I would say she was probably the breadwinner of our family growing up, right? She was more entrepreneurial. My dad was the stable one. And it's good to have that balance. So you're not, you know, both your parents are going crazy with all these different projects. And there's just like constant, you know, I don't know, you could say instability in a sense. So it's good to have that balance. But one thing I take away from my mom is to never be reliant on others, right? You can be codependent. I think that's great, like especially if you have a partner. Obviously, you can depend on each other to some extent. But when I say reliant, I mean more in a negative way, as in like, you know, I'm just going to marry rich, or, you know, I'm going to hope for good luck, things like that. So that's just something I learned seeing my mom start businesses and also fail businesses and this and that, but just never give up. That drive is really something that I take from her. And then outside of my family, I would say the biggest, it's hard to say, because I would say Iman Ghazi has actually had probably the most profound impact on me as an entrepreneur, because I just watched so many of his videos and seeing his evolution, because he's documented everything, right? Seeing how real it was for him all along, and that it wasn't from, you know, poor, no money, single mom, to where he is now in a flash. It really did take, you know, almost 10 years to get here. And just seeing it all documented, that just makes it feel so possible for me as well, right? And also the responsibility he puts on himself at such a young age, and his desire to give back to his mom. I'm also super close to my mom, so I just think I can relate to him in a sense. Yeah, I would say those are my two biggest role models. And then you said, what's one actionable step?
Yeah, what can people, but I think they can take away, if I'm summarizing what you're saying, the first one is maybe the concept of extreme ownership, is that you are responsible for your life. Sure, it could be nice to marry someone that's rich, but don't be dependent on it, because you are creating your own life. And I think the second one with Iman is just, he's a very inspiring. He shows you what is possible. And I think that's also what masterminds are so good for, or people to look up at. The more you read about them, the more you know about their background, the more you understand, this is just a guy. Like, sure, he's smart, and I admire where he is right now, but he was at the same position I was at. So if I just put in the work, I do the same things he's doing, I can get there as well. And that really shifts your belief from, that's what I struggled with at the start of an entrepreneur. Like, I was always looking up to people, or, oh, this guy, he is doing 50K a month, I can never be like that. And once you talk to those people, you understand, hey, this is a very cool guy, but he isn't any smarter than I am. And he doesn't, like, he just does the right things. And that really opens your mind. But I hope I summarized it correctly there.
No, that was perfect. Yeah, one thing I can add to that, I mean, you said extreme ownership, absolutely. Like, build something of your own, right? Build something of your own, and then go out there and look for a partner, whatever, that sort of thing. And also extending the timeline. That's something I've learned from Iman. As you said, maybe when you first start, it's like, I just want to make my first million within a year as quickly as possible. I just want to get all these clients in. But then I think the more you're in entrepreneurship, you realize that it's a never-ending game, right? And there's always a next level. And so
Yeah.
even if you get to 1 million, right, maybe that was everything you were hoping for initially, but then you get there and you're not going to stop there, right?
Okay.
So why the rush to hit like this one specific target? You know, yeah, extend the timeline.
Yeah. Super interesting. Lea, I want to thank you for your time. It was a super fun interview. If people want to find you, they can go to your Instagram or Facebook. They can get more in touch into what you do, how you help people overcome procrastination, really master their time. And I would honestly say, as an entrepreneur, especially if you're starting out, buy a course like that or a program or a coaching instead of investing into another business coach. Because if you can't lead yourself, if
Yes.
you don't have the right habits,
Yeah.
nothing is going to work. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Oh my gosh. Can I just share one more thing based on this?
Yeah. Yeah. Of
Because
course.
I talk to so many people where they are struggling with these foundational things, right? Sleep, exercise, consistency, da 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 da. You know what I'm talking about. Habits, time management, also
Yeah.
health, what you do. And yet, sometimes at the end of the call, even though this is crystal clear that they need to work on their foundations first, it's still, well, let me try to make up for it by investing my money in stocks and just hope that it goes up, right? Because
Yeah.
ultimately, I just want to make money. And that is a very, very short-term perspective, right? And you're betting on something that's not yourself. It's out of your control. You're putting your money in stocks. I mean, it could go up, it could go down. And ultimately, it's not going to solve the core problem. And so even if you do that and you make money, in the long run, you're still going to suffer because your foundations are not right. So, yeah, I would say for anyone who is struggling with these foundational skills, habits, time management, health, like reach out to Stefan, reach out to me. Maybe we can help.
Yeah, exactly. And the last point I want to make here is if you look at Iman, why did he become the person that he is now? Sure, he's made a lot of money investing into crypto, but he's made that money because he has the skills of selling. He has the consistent work output. He knows
Yes.
how he can optimize his sleep. He just knows how he can do the work. And because he can do that and he has the right strategy, that's why he gets success. But you can have the perfect strategy. Like you can have the best business coach in the world, but you still have to take action. You still have to do those things. And if you are procrastinating on it or you have low energy, it's just not going to work, or it will take you a very long time to do
Absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome, Lea. Again, I want to thank you for your time. It was great talking to you. I'll link everything in here below. If you want to talk to Lea about it, of course, reach out to her. And then I'll see you in the next podcast episode.